Joining us tonight again for more insight is Behnam Taleblu. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Behnam, it can be hard to gauge from the outside sometimes. How big of a deal are these protests?
Well, Chance, it's a pleasure to be with you again. These protests actually follow a somewhat longer tradition now for about at least a half decade, if not more, of Iranian population going out into the street, seemingly due to a non-political event, but turning that into a massive political protest against the regime. You know, you've seen in that half decade now, protests move far away from reform and entirely for revolution against the entire system. This is not factional. This is not technical. This is about the state versus street divide inside the Islamic Republic and what happens when you have a revolutionary regime and a post-revolutionary society.
So this is not, we want a slightly more liberal president. This is like, we want the theocracy and Ayatollah gone.
Indeed. You know, you've heard for, at least a half decade, if not more than a half decade, chance of death to the dictator. This was a third rail that protesters during the 2009 Green Movement first helped breach or break by going after Khamenei, that's the country's supreme leader, in some of their slogans and in some of their rhetoric. But this really picked up in 2017, 2018, where actually there was significant foreign pressure on the regime and significant domestic pressure on the regime. And the constituency for the protests have changed. Rather than starting in Tehran and going outward, these begin on the literal geographic and physical periphery of the country and move inward. And the generation doing it is not the upper middle class or the upwardly mobile. It's the urban and rural poor and the people who have a fundamentally different value set and worldview than this regime.
I want to go a few layers deeper here because it is noteworthy that this has been led by women. So it's not just about politics. It's also about autonomy and dignity and all of this. So to be clear, my understanding is, and please tell me if this is wrong, it's not that Iranian women despise the hijab necessarily. It's that they want to make more decisions for themselves.
Well, it seems to be an evolving combination of both here. Iranian women have increasingly, and I wouldn't want to speak for them, but speaking on what we've seen them do and how they react to the mandatory veiling or the mandatory hijab and the fact that we do have institutionalized discrimination that Iranian activists have called gender apartheid inside the Islamic Republic, part of which does come from Islamic law, but another part of it does come from the Khomeini's interpretation of that law, which when fused with the hyper-authoritarianism of this regime creates a very toxic brew. And you do have, glass ceilings on Iranian women in academia, in the workplace, in society, in the legal system. There's institutionalized discrimination. And most unfortunately, across that country, wherever the regime can make its presence manifest. So the targeting of the hijab, which many have likened to being one of the main pillars of this regime, is Iranian people, and in particular Iranian women, taking back their autonomy, standing up to the regime, and also standing up to systematized discrimination that has existed culturally and now worse politically and legally with the Islamic Republic.
And Behnam, we're seeing all these videos of women cutting their hair, which, it's highly personal. It's getting all these headlines. And anytime someone acted against the government, it was behind closed doors. But it seems that people these days, they want to be seen in acts of defiance.
Indeed, you've seen the population move to become more defiant and more aggressive, yet not just in response to the increasing violence that they're facing, both on the street and in cyberspace. But also the Iranian population is looking for every available opportunity, whether it's social norms, foreign policy, fashion, economics, the environment, religious issues, to signal how fundamentally different of a view they have than the state that rules them. So, hair and fashion has long been politicized, and women have long been at the forefront of pushing against these gender-based discriminatory rules inside the Islamic Republic. Now I would expect women to also continue to be at the helm of these protests, regardless of whether they originate in the capital or in rural provinces.
Bottom line here, Behnam, and you have been a critic of the regime there, but be it economic, political, religious, there is unrest. But is Iran any closer to actually changing its system?
Well, it's clear that the Iranian people do want to change the system. It's really a matter of when, not if. So fundamentally, you do have the regime that has continuing to use violence against the Iranian people. You have the Islamic Republic coarsening, and you have more and more security forces that the regime feels more comfortable overtly deploying against protesters. But if the past is going to be any kind of indicator for the future here, there will be more protests. And that simply means the U.S. is not going to be able to wish these issues away anytime soon.
Behnam Taleblu, as always, thank you.
Thank you.